Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at some incredibly fun battles in the Open Master League featuring my level 50 Perfect IV Slaking. Slaking is a pure normal type Pokemon with stats so good that with even a remotely decent fast move, this thing would destroy the Master League. So it stuck with Yawn, the worst fast move in the game, rendering it very difficult to use. I paired it up with a Zacian and a Dialga, and was actually able to go positive with the team. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches and check out Slaking Destruction in the Open Master League. Hopping into the first match, picking up a pretty decent lead Zacian into Ho-Oh. I am running the double nukes moveset on Zacian of Wild Charge and Close Combat, and Wild Charge allows Zacian to be a serious threat versus Ho-Oh. Ho-Oh is going to shield up the Wild Charge, and they're going to be firing off the Sacred Fire, hoping for a potential attack drop. Sacred Fire will connect onto the Zacian. Thankfully for me, we do not see the attack drop. This Wild Charge does not KO, but it does a lot of damage, getting Ho-Oh deep into the red. I'm going to farm up and switch into Dialga as they fire off their Brave Bird. Brave Bird not going to do a lot of damage. My opponent is going to send in their own Dialga. I'm going to be able to make it to the Draco Meteor if they try and go for the farm down, which they do. So my opponent is willing to concede a shield in exchange for a massive amount of energy. So they leave loaded on energy, but I should be able to send in the Zacian, shield once, and Close Combat to take care of this Dialga. Farming up with the Zacian, over farming slightly, and going for the Close Combat. No shields remaining for the opponent. Dialga will get KO'd in the back. They have Giratina Origin, and that's the perfect Pokemon for Slaking to see. Slaking, of course, with the normal typing, is double resisting both of Giratina's charge moves here, and Giratina is in a world of hurt, and it's going up against the worst fast move in the game, Yawn. Earthquake connects, that does massive damage to the Giratina. Giratina continuing to spam out these double resistant moves, going for Shadow Ball after Shadow Ball. In comes Ho-Oh. I throw two Yawns and I'm going for the Body Slam. Body Slam is going to be taking care of the Ho-Oh. Back in comes the Giratina. Giratina is going to need multiple charge moves to KO, and they cannot get there. Slaking makes the Earthquake, neutralizing the Giratina and securing the win. Picking up a slightly negative lead in the next match, Zacian into Mewtwo. This is not the ideal matchup for Zacian, so I'm just going to safe switch into Dialga. My opponent is going to stay in here, go for the Side Strike, and typically with this play pattern, they're going to Side Strike and bring in their own Dialga, and that's exactly what my opponent is going to do. Their plan is they want to get chip damage so they can guarantee keeping switch advantage, and they're going to give up a shield in exchange for a bunch of energy where they can get the shield back from my Zacian. So they shield up the Draco Meteor, they're going to farm down, and now I'm going to be sending back in the Zacian. I do live in Iron Head here, but Iron Head does do a lot of damage, so I have a decision to make. I decide to commit the shield, and I decide, you know what, I'm actually going to let them make it to another Iron Head because I want to try and farm all the way up to 100 energy. That way, I can have a massive energy head start for taking on the Mewtwo and hopefully whatever my opponent has in the back. So I'm firing off the Close Combat here, going for the Undercharge. Unfortunately, it's still enough to KO. Back in comes the Mewtwo. I can't quite make it to the back-to-back Wild Charges here. I'm firing off the Wild Charge into the Mewtwo. Mewtwo commits the shield. It's a simultaneous switch, Slaking into Zekrom. As you can see, Yawn does absolutely nothing to the Zekrom, so I'm entirely reliant on making it to the Earthquake. Fusion Bolt connects, Slaking makes it to the Earthquake. This is super effective damage. Earthquake nearly one-shots the Zekrom, but Zekrom hangs on due to Yawn doing no damage. Zacian cannot get the farm down, and that should spell game over here as a Fusion Bolt into the Side Strike combo as they win CMP over the Zacian will mean game over for me. Moving into the next match, we see a pretty nice lead Zacian into Dialga. Even though Dialga can hit back for super effective damage with Iron Head, Zacian's pacing advantage is what makes this matchup favorable. One Close Combat does not one-shot from this health range, but if I get enough quick attack damage, then I can put it into a range where the Close Combat will be lethal. Close Combat does about 2/3 of Dialga's HP, so I am going to need some chip damage here for the Close Combat to KO. Opponent is going to safe switch into Mewtwo, and I respond with Dialga. Dialga farming up, Mewtwo not building up to the Focus Blast here. Honestly, I wasn't going to shield anyway, but now I feel even safer in that decision knowing that it can only be a Shadow Ball. I'm farming up and going for the Iron Head. Mewtwo is going to let that through, and Dialga gets the farm down, denying their energy. My opponent, do they want to send back in their own Dialga here? Dialga enters the field. Unfortunately, they're going to get the perfect farm down as I do not make it to the Iron Head. I send in the Zacian, but they did leave with a move, and Dialga will of course win CMP. So I'm going to commit the shield and fire off the close combat here. I'm going to go for an undercharge. Close combat, not quite going to KO. They switch, and it's a Giratina origin in the back, and that's what Slaking was wanting to see. Slaking absolutely feasting on these Giratinas, as they can only hit for double resisted damage. I'm farming up and firing off the Earthquake here. Earthquake into the Giratina. It connects, and the opponent concedes the match. We see a very neutral lead in the next match, Zacian into Xerneas. Definitely happy to see the Xerneas here compared to my backline, so I'm going to be staying in this matchup. Xerneas is going to go for the Moonblast as soon as they get there, and I will immediately no-shield. I want to tank this damage before I lower my defense with Wild Charge. So I'm going to farm up to the back-to-back Wild Charges here. Wild Charge number 1 into the Xerneas will be no-shielded. One more quick attack and going for Wild Charge number 2. Now this will be lethal. Decision time for my opponent. They're going to let that go. What are they going to bring in? They send in Ho-Oh, and I end up pivoting into Dialga. I was debuffed on the Zacian, so I didn't really want to stay in there, but this is not a good spot for me to be in. Dialga does not have a positive matchup here. Sacred Fire gets the debuff, and my opponent is now going to send in their own Dialga. I farm up just shy of 100 energy, and I'm baiting. Iron Head bait gets the shield from the Dialga, and I just cannot make it to the Draco Meteor. Precision in counting from my opponent. Iron Head is going to KO. I'm going to send in Slaking, farming up energy here. Dialga firing off a charge move. I'm just going to let this through. Dialga is going to fire off the Iron Head. That's going to get Slaking low. Slaking makes the Earthquake, and this will be lethal. I am very low on health with the Zacian. I need to make it to the back-to-back moves. In comes the Zacian, and I also need to make sure that the damage registers before I get to the Wild Charge, but it ends up being on alignment. I can't make the back-to-back Wild Charges, and that's game over. We're greeted with a familiar lead in the next match, leading Zacian into Dialga. Pretty nice matchup for the Zacian, so I don't mind staying in here whatsoever, but my opponent is going to be save switching into Mewtwo, so my plan here is to stay in, wait for them to Psy Strike, go for a Wild Charge, and then bring in my Dialga. Because I know that I'm able to pretty comfortably tank a Psy Strike here, so I'm pretty safe to tank it, Wild Charge, and then bring in my own Dialga. I'm going to be able to tank whatever they throw here, get the farm down, and then leave with energy to pressure my opponent's Dialga if that's what they decide to send in. They go for the Ice Beam there. Ice Beam does some solid damage, and my plan is to let myself get as low as possible before I go for the Draco, so I can maximize the amount of Dragon Breath damage. So I'm going to farm up till the last possible moment and go for the Draco Meteor here. This will guarantee the knockout or the shield, and now my opponent is very comfortably in close combat range. So I'm going to fully wait my timer here. Our timers will still be about 5 seconds desynced when I enter the field, but after throwing this, our timers are back in alignment. They fire off the Iron Head. I'm going to farm up in the back. It's another Giratina origin, and the backline Giratinas are having a truly atrocious day. Shadow Ball into the Slaking. We already know that does absolutely nothing. Giratina Origin is an incredibly powerful Pokemon, but it is just absolutely helpless going up against Slaking. Opponent ends up throwing on alignment. To be fair, no one knows how many turns Yawn is anyway, so we end up getting a Yawn for free. Farming up again. Again, Yawn is such a terrible fast move. They go for another Shadow Ball. I'm farming up here and going for the Earthquake. This will be lethal here. Opponent thinking about it. They call the bait. In comes the Dialga, and at this point, they just stop attacking. They know the game is over, and I can very comfortably make the back-to-back close combats here. Opponent lets it through, recognizing that the game is finished. Picking up a nice lead in the next match, Zacian into Ho-Oh. Like last time, I'm going to be staying in this lead matchup because my backline really does not want to see Ho-Oh. Unfortunately, there was a little bit of lag to start off that game, so I wasn't able to throw on 7 quick attacks like I would have preferred. Honestly, it might have still been good timing, but due to that inconsistency, I didn't want to risk potentially throwing on alignment, so I ended up just throwing on 9 instead. Not the most ideal timing, but still better than alignment. So I'm able to connect with the Wild Charge. Opponent banks a move for later, and they mirror with their own Dialga. I have the energy head start, so I can make the Draco Meteor here. I'm putting pressure on that final shield. Opponent calls the bait, and they get KO'd. In the back, it's Lugia, and this is honestly looking tough here. as Slaking really does not appreciate anything that resists Earthquake. I'm building up and going for the debuff Draco. Opponent commits the shield. Wait, maybe there's a chance here. That's a bit of a misplay from my opponent, and now I'm just going to send in the Slaking, and I think the win con is basically just using Slaking as a meat shield here. Slaking tanks the Arrow Blast. I'm farming up here. I'm going to need a lot of body slams, but they throw their energy. Honestly, this is perfect. I'm just going to let this go. Sky Attack will KO, and I just need to trust in Zacian to win this game. Zacian farming up energy. They're going for the Sky Attack, but Sky Attack will not KO here, so I'm going to save my shield. Sky Attack is going to get me low, but I should be able to farm up so much energy. I'm farming up to 100 and going for the Wild Charge. This will, of course, lower my defense, so my opponent will go for a switch into Ho-Oh, but we get the farm down. And that's going to be game over there. So Slaking, unfortunately, didn't see a lot of play in this particular match, but we get the win nevertheless. We lead our Zacian into another Dialga in the next match, and at this point, we're very familiar with how this is going to play out. And the opponent save switches into Mewtwo. We've seen this team a couple times now, so it's probably going to be the Giratina in the back. So same game plan as before, we tank the Psy Strike, go for the Wild Charge, and then we bring in Dialga. This opponent actually shields the Wild Charge, so they are potentially looking to try and make a play for switch advantage. I do not want to let that happen, so I'm going to shield a move here. Even if it's not the Focus Blast, which it's not, shielding the move will guarantee that I can keep switch advantage here, and I'm going to be able to farm down before they make 2 more moves, and a Shadow Ball is not going to be enough to KO. So I'm going to get the farm down. Opponent gives up switch, and they send in the Dialga. Bit of a risky bait, but even if they call it, I can make the Draco. And they shield. This is even better. I make the Draco, and now my opponent is going to be in a world of hurt as they lose the entire Dialga. And it's the Giratina in the back again. Oh my goodness. I was seeing this team a lot today, and oh, it was just absolutely Christmas seeing this team, as Giratina again just completely helpless against the wrath of Slaking. Slaking firing off the Earthquake here. Earthquake will connect, dealing massive damage to the Giratina. Slaking continuing to farm. Opponent gives Slaking an entire yawn for free. Shadow Ball connects. I just have to watch for a potential switch. They go for the catch. We yawn down the Mewtwo. That's not a sentence I thought I'd ever say. Slaking, Earthquake, KOs the Giratina, and that is a good game. Picking up a positive lead in the next match, Zacian into Dragonite. Now, I have 2 pretty good responses to Dragonite with this team. Opponent save switches into Mewtwo, and I'm going to respond with Dialga. Dialga farming up, opponent firing off a charge move, and again, I'm not going to be shielding the first move here. Mewtwo only ends up going for the Psy Strike, so they are farming up here, so I'm just going to go for the Iron Head. Iron Head will just about KO. Opponent is going to commit the shield, so they're potentially looking to make a play for switch here. I decide to call it as the Psy Strike. If they go for the Psy Strike, which they do, they cannot Psycho Cut down. So a bit of a misplay there by my opponent, anticipating a shield, but since they went double Psy Strike here, only the Shadow can go for double Psy Strike and win, whereas if you see there, oh man, I try and go for the Draco, and I'm not able to do so, but in the back, it's a Metagross, and suddenly I'm in danger. And here's where, if Slaking had even a remotely competent fast move, this would just be a win. But Yawn is so bad. I bait with the Body Slam, but they should be able to make it to the back-to-back Meteor Mashes here, which is really bad news for me. Meteor Mash number 1 gets the shield, but they have another one here. The question is, can Slaking survive? Meteor Mash, Slaking survives, but dies with the Earthquake, and I resign the match. Hopping into the final match, and we lead Zacian into Dialga one last time. Opponent save switches into Mewtwo, and I immediately counter with Dialga. Honestly, I like the way that I played it in the earlier matchups a lot better. Just staying in, tanking a Psy Strike, going for the Wild Charge, and then bringing in Dialga, because after they land the Ice Beam, they can now secure a KO with a Psy Strike, and I'm going to have to go down a shield to win this matchup. So I'm able to grab a shield with the Iron Head, but the good news is, even if I have to go down a shield, as long as it's the team that we've been seeing all day with the Giratina in the back, we're about to have a very sad opponent on our hands. I'm going to be shielding up the Dialga here, going for the full farm down, and I'm going to be able to get that shield back from their Dialga with the Draco. They bring in their Dialga. I'm just firing off the Draco here. Opponent will have to commit the shield, and they do. I'm going to get farmed down here, but I can tank an Iron Head. I'm farming up with the Zacian. I just have to watch for potential catch and switch onto the Giratina. They fire off the Iron Head. That's going to connect in the back. You guessed it. It's the Giratina. I don't know where all these teams are coming from, but I am so happy to see them as Slaking is just absolutely brutalizing these Giratinas. Firing off the Earthquake here. Opponent has no shields left, so they have nothing that can prevent what's about to happen. They're firing off another charge move here. Do they go for the Ominous Wind, hoping for the boost? No, they're just going for the Shadow Balls, but Slaking does not care about your double resisted damage, getting the Yawn through as they fire off their charge move. Shadow Ball will connect. I'm farming up and going for the Earthquake. They're just not able to switch. Earthquake KOs. In comes the Zacian, and Zacian will go for the close combat. But close combat will not KO here. It's going to get the Dialga low. It's going to be a race. Zacian gets the farm down, and the opponent concedes the match. All in all, I had an absolute blast getting to run Slaking. I was finally able to get the XLs for my hundo with the Catching Z's event, and I surprisingly was able to go 7-5 over 12 games with the team. It definitely helped that I was pairing it up with arguably the strongest or one of the strongest Master League cores with Zacian and Dialga, but man, getting to make those Giratina's life miserable was just so much fun. Slaking, definitely not a Pokemon I'd recommend using currently because Yawn is just utterly awful, but even if it gets... It could even get a pretty bad fast move and still have play, just anything better than Yawn. And this thing could have some very nice potential in the Open Master League. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.